Welcome back to Unboxing OD. I'm your host, Kenneth Pearson, and this episode is one that reminded me why I began these conversations in the first place. In my time with Colonel Chris Ritchie, what struck me most was how consistently he returns to one simple truth. Leadership is less about the titles we carry or the medals on our chest, and more about the quiet impact we have on the people around us. As you listen, you'll hear how Chris has built programs that reach thousands of employees at Auburn University, not by focusing on systems alone, but by anchoring them in relationships, values, and purpose. You'll hear how performance development becomes meaningful when it's framed as a conversation, not a transaction, and how reflection, something leaders too often overlook, can be the very thing that steadies us. What I carried from this conversation is how much power there is in the small things. The way we open a one-on-one, the way we acknowledge someone's purpose beyond their job, the way we give and receive what Chris calls invisible medals. These are the moments that stay with people long after the strategy slides are forgotten. So as you settle in, I invite you to listen not just for ideas you can apply in your work, but for the ways you might carry significance into someone's life. One conversation, one act of care, one choice at a time. So grab that cup of coffee and let's dive in. Hello and welcome, everybody. I'm joined by Colonel Chris Ritchie, United States Marine Corps retired. Colonel Chris Ritchie is the Auburn University Director of Human Resource Development. After graduating from Auburn in 1992, Chris embarked on a 30-year military journey. He has led teams and organizations ranging in size from 4 to 2,500 and served as the Executive Steering Committee Chairman for Marine Corps Aviation C2, a worldwide organization exceeding 10,000 people. His team has implemented a comprehensive leadership and performance development program for all Auburn University employees that is making a significant difference in people's lives. Chris is a mentor, board member, keynote speaker, 3-time award-winning military author, and 2-time Amazon bestseller. His latest book, The Invisible Medal, Leading with a Higher Purpose, was published in April of 2024. And Chris, I want to say this is a pleasure. You and I had this opportunity to speak at or talk a little bit at ATD OrgDev 2024. I can't believe it's 2025, but
I
2024.
know. Where's time go, huh?
Yeah, really, really honestly. And and I remember, our conversation about specifically about the book, The Invisible Medal. So I am very, very happy to have you on the show today. And I just want to welcome you. So welcome.
Thank you so much, Ken, and thank you for everything that you're doing when you reached out about these podcasts. I thought that is just really awesome. I knew you would be doing something like this after we met there in Atlanta, but really honored and humbled to be a part of your show today.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, Chris. I appreciate it. I know that we were just having a conversation before, and we're talking about and we'll get into a little bit about, or actually we'll get a little bit more into the programs that you're creating over at Auburn University. But you said that 800
That's right.
employees or 800 employees have already gone through one of those programs in there.
Between the two programs we have right now, 800 have graduated, and we have another 1,000 enrolled. So
Wow,
really
wow.
going well. I'm very, very happy about that.
That's wonderful. And when did you launch that?
So the first phase, which we call Leading Self, this is open for any of the 6,500 employees that we have, was launched in August of 2024. And then it wasn't until January of 2025 when the next level, which is Leading People. So anybody who's a supervisor of one or more human beings is eligible then for what we call Leading People. That launched in January, and that one is an in-person cohort based. So we can have up to 50 employees going through that one at a time, and they run every 6 weeks. The Leading Self is all automated online since there's so many people that could go through that. So that's how that's going.
Wow. That is so. I mean, that's incredible work. I mean, it's the fact that you've reached 800 employees, in just about a year. I mean, That is really, really impressive. So
That's true. But
congratulations
we
on that
didn't know
front.
what was going to happen. I mean, there was the fear that we would get zero people to enroll. So
There you
I,
go. So from 0 to 800, you're doing
right,
wonderful, Chris.
we're happy.
Yeah, yeah, wonderful, wonderful. So you've Chris, you've actually led at just about every level. So from Marine Corps units to a major university. So when you think about all of those different roles, what's the thread that stayed constant in how you lead?
Yeah, Ken, that's an excellent question because a lot of folks they think that they have to lead situationally, I suppose. I'm not sure that I really abide by that mentality because you lose a fundamental level of authenticity, I think, when you do that. So I just try to be me and what I think really resonated the most, which is to build meaningful relationships with your teammates. And sometimes there's smaller teams and sometimes there's significantly larger teams. But really, if you focus on, and not just a relationship, an organizational hierarchy is relationships, but there's nothing of significance or meaning there until you take the time to make the connections with people. And, uh, and I think that is such an important part of it. Beyond building those meaningful relationships, people always want to know where we're going. What is the vision? And you see a lot of folks will come in sometimes new to an organization, say, all right, here's the vision, everybody follow me, which is kind of silly because so give yourself at least 30 days to make an assessment and engage with the team. And where do you want to go? What's our current state? What is our desired future state? And then you can kind of craft a plan on how to get there. So people love to have a vision for a better tomorrow, right? It doesn't have to be perfect, but just a better tomorrow. So building those meaningful relationships, providing a vision for a better tomorrow. And I think probably the most important part of that is helping folks find purpose and the roles that they're fulfilling because everything that we do is so important and helping people understand that there is a meaning behind what it is that we do and it doesn't matter what your particular role is in an organization if you can connect that to some type of a higher level purpose of significance then I think that you're really going to make a difference and an impact regardless of the organization that you're leading.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. And I know one of there's so much to unpack there, by the way.
That's true.
Just
Yeah,
just so
man.
much to unpack there. I mean, I can go on for hours now just based off that one answer, you know.
Oh, that's perfect.
But I mean, one of the things, and I don't know if you remember when we were at ATD Org Dev last year, the keynote speaker that opened up, Crystal Kadakia, right?
Yes.
Okay, great. So my the first episode that we talk here, when she gave her presentation, it resonated with me so much that this podcast was born. And I
Wow.
actually even mentioned her in the first episode, that she reminded me of why we do this work, of the human-centered approach.
Mm,
Not going into an organization like you're saying and saying, yes, this is how we're doing it. Follow me. This is the strategy. Going in, listening to the people, finding out how the organization works, finding out what the culture is, um, understanding who your team is. Not
yeah.
just walking in and saying, "Well, this is what it is. This is how I lead." It's not the way it works. And having individuals find that purpose in there, which is what I love you said in there too.
Yep.
Everybody can find some purpose to what they're doing, some purpose to why they show up to work. And they might not like their work, which is totally fine. But the purpose that they go to work might be the reason why they show up. So they might be showing up because they want to provide for their family. They might be
Mhm.
showing up
That's true.
because, yeah, yeah. So they might be showing up because, they are paying for school. They might be showing up for whatever the case might be. So I love that idea of having individuals find their purpose, and whatever that purpose might be, it might not be at work. That's a key in there, and that's something that I've had to come to terms with, is the
Yep.
fact that
True.
sometimes the purpose isn't at work. You know?
And it's okay to have those conversations and then and you know what you can do to help enable that person. Obviously, you're learning very much that they value their family. And so when they ask to go home a little bit early so they can attend a kid's soccer game, you say, absolutely, I value that. I'm here to help you achieve all your goals personally and professionally, right? Ken, I want to say two things real quick, if you don't mind, for jumping off script. First off, I loved your introduction to how you called it a journey, because leadership it is a journey, and you're never going to get to the end of that journey, honestly. And after I retired from the Marine Corps and then took on this job at Auburn with human resource development, I'll be honest, in full transparency, I was a little bit nervous because here I am taking on a new role and something I've not really done anything with. Of course, with Marines, you lead humans. Okay, I get that. But my technical role was not within human resources. And I know your podcast is geared towards OD professionals, maybe folks that are coming in new and maybe are questioning themselves about, am I ready for this new role? And it kind of hit me a month into this new job that, you know what, all I have to do is focus on people. And I came up with a little acronym I call CARE, and it's just communicate, be available, be respectful, and encourage. And when I started just focusing on that, everything else kind of fell into place. I wasn't worried anymore, and we just kind of built the team, started making good things happen.
That's awesome. And that's such a great message too. Cause it actually reminds me, I just saw a post. I believe it was on LinkedIn and it was by Adam Grant. It just posted
Mm,
something and he was talking about imposter syndrome. So
yeah,
he said, it said like I'm going to paraphrase it, but he basically, imposter syndrome exists because we don't know what we don't know,
perfect.
and your approach that month into it, that, the CBBE, right? Is that what it is? What is it? Communicate.
Care,
Oh,
because we care.
care
You care about people. So communicate, be available, be respectful, and encourage.
and encourage. Yeah. And that's what it is. Human-centered approach. And that's what, this is what this podcast is all about. It's all about that human-centered approach. It's all about, people. It's all about, getting to know your teams, but also getting to know yourself as well. I mean, that's a really, really important aspect of it. Like we can be,
Yeah.
go out there and say, oh, this is great. I know you, I know you, I know you. But how well are we going to know everybody else if we don't know ourselves? And that's really, really important for us as professionals, especially in this space, because we work with people. We work really, like, a lot of our work is relational. It's really important for us to have a good, solid understanding of ourselves, so that we understand. The previous podcast episode that I had was on OD burnout, so organizational development burnout, and how it's its own little. We all experience burnout, but OD burnout is its own. Human resources burnout is its own type of burnout. Behavioral health professional burnout is its own type of burnout. So it's not just a blanket burnout. So we talk a little bit about that, that relational work, and really having an understanding of yourself as a person, so you can identify, so you can, when you're going through, let's say, a really difficult time, when you've been trying all that. We talked a little bit about change before this too. When you're doing all these change initiatives and there's just resistance, 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 not month after month, but year after year. And then you just walk away and you're just like, I just don't know what to do anymore. You get this constant burnout in there. So, or these burnout stimulus or stimuli, if you want to call them. But it's just being aware of them. So yeah, so that's
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 spot
that's
on.
wonderful.
And that is our first level in our leadership development program. It is called Leading Self, because it's truly learning and understanding how to unleash your own leadership potential
Hmm.
through your own
Hmm.
values and knowing who you are, where you're going. So yeah,
Yeah.
you're spot on. You've got to understand yourself, and
Yeah, yeah. Got to understand yourself, and when going back to purpose, you got to understand what your goals are and what your purpose to go to work is. Throughout my career, my levels have changed. It used to be all about compensation. I want to get paid. That's what I want. But
yeah,
I mean, as I've gotten older, compensation has kind of moved down the line a little bit. It's like number five now, or number four, number five. And, for me,
okay,
work-life balance or work-life harmony is number one. Meaningful work is number two. Growth, professional, personal growth opportunities is number three. Benefits, would be number four, maybe flip flop compensation benefits. Just Depends on who has the better benefits between myself and my wife. So it flips between 4 or 5.
There you go.
But it's just important. It's important for people to understand why they're showing up to work, why they're doing the work, and the fact that you're giving the employees at Auburn University, Auburn University. Let me say it
Hmm.
correctly.
Oh, cool.
The I don't want to call it University of,
Oh, that's
if it's
funny. Yeah,
yeah. I don't
we,
want
we,
to get a whole bunch of people mad at me, Chris. So, at Auburn University, you're giving them the insights to be able to see this, to see themselves as leaders, to see themselves as more than just their work, and that's such a great thing to do. Such a great thing to do. So, yeah, awesome,
wonderful,
Chris.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So you've shared that leadership at its core is about being significant for others. And we were just talking about it a little bit. So can
Hmm.
you take us back to when that really clicked for you? What shifted in how you showed up after that?
Yes, I can. It's a long story, but I'm going to paraphrase it for you. And it's kind of, in the military, it's very competitive. And you can imagine walking around and wearing your bio on your chest, so anytime you meet somebody, they can see everything about you. And in the military, that's our medals, okay, that we wear, and people can see, oh, where has this person been, what have they achieved, what have they accomplished. And so I think society is too driven towards success. It should be more about significance. But anyway, in the military, that really it's competitive. It's the medals that you wear. It shows that you've achieved something. Success breeds success. You get promotions and things of that nature. So it was one of my deployments after 9/11, shortly after 9/11, in fact. And we did some things that were pretty impressive. And it was an interesting particular deployment because 75% of our unit came from folks outside of my own company for the particular mission that we had overseas. And we had to provide our own internal security, which meant these are the folks that would be securing us inside of our little compound. But there couldn't be any infantry because they were already in Afghanistan. So we had to source it from within the Marine Expeditionary Force. I remember it was really late one night, and there was a knock on my door, and there's two sharp-looking Marines who just standing at my door. I said, "Enter." And they marched in, and they jumped to attention. Lance Corporal Lamb and Lance Corporal Kashuta reporting as ordered. I said, "All right, Marines, at ease." I said, "You must be the last two Marines I needed for our security detail." They said, "Sir, yes, sir." I said, "Well, what unit did you come from?" In perfect unison, they both blurred out, "We're in the band, sir." And I kind of chuckled. I was like, "Oh my gosh." I laughed and I felt bad because in the Marine Corps, there's an ethos that every Marine is a rifleman. We're all trained in the same combat tactics. Doesn't matter if you're aviation C2 like me or in the band. And I apologized for laughing. And anyway, long story short, I told them where we needed to be. A week later, we were deployed. And it was a nearly an 8-month long deployment. And I got to know everybody there very, very well. And several Marines I thought were very capable of becoming officers and leading at the next level. Lance Corporal Kashuta was one of those. So the deployment comes and goes, and I remember, you know what, these Marines deserve some type of recognition. They've crushed it, and I can't even get into all the details of what we did, but I made sure that every Marine was given some type of recognition, and I was expecting a Bronze Star because all the other commanders in the region were getting those, but after several months, I realized that just wasn't going to happen. So I received nothing because of that deployment. All the things that we did took me to a little bitter place for a very short period of time. But there's one letter in the alphabet that's always a good thing. You change that I and replace it with an E. It's all about being better and learning and growing. And around that time is when I received a letter from Beth Kashuta, his Lance Corporal Kashuta's wife. She was also a Marine serving overseas, but the two of them were married. And she sent me an email and said, "Sir, I just want you to know that my husband got accepted to the Marine Corps officer program, and it would have never happened had you not invested the time that you spent in him, and you have been significant in our lives in ways that we can never thank you for." And so for me, that was the epiphany. That's when I realized that it doesn't matter what we wear up here on our chest. It's those invisible medals. That's the title of the book. The invisible medals that we wear that matter more than anything. And that's when you are significant in another person's life. And from that point on, I've not cared about accolades or ribbons or medals or anything. I just want more emails like Beth Kashuta's email. And you only get that when you invest in individual people and try to help them achieve their full potential.
Yeah, that's that's great. And I remember we talked a lot about that when we were at the conference
Yeah.
together, and we were talking about the book, and I remember you told me that. So you were telling me this story, and it just completely resonated with me,
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of times, you get a lot of people that like look for these accolades, that need these accolades, that need this recognition. And I know that, a lot of the things that we talk about, like a lot of things I talk about too, are being able to find the lessons in our defeats, let's say.
Yes.
So, I want to call you not getting the Bronze Star a
Oh, that's no big
defeat,
deal. Yeah.
but like you said, you were just saying that you were in the, in a bitter place for a very short period of time. But then you're starting to see the impact that you had on those individuals that you were leading, and almost like succession planning, a lot of stuff that we
Mhm.
talk about, but having this and being able to know that, you know, one of the episodes that'll be coming up, next week's episode that'll be coming up, I talk a little bit about legacy and how people want this grandiose legacy. And me being one of those people, I was a writer, I'm a writer and everything. Of course, like I
Yeah.
would love my book to be studied 50 years after I die,
Mhm.
in the year 2200, it's
There you go.
Shakespeare and Faulkner and Pearson, all the good ones, whatever you want to say. I mean, but in reality, that's not going to happen. Like I mean, it may, but that's, I mean, and I won't be able to like enjoy it because I'm not going to live to be 200 years old. So that's just what's going to happen. Um, but we talk about I talk a lot about legacy, and legacy is being, you know, we don't frame legacy the way it should be framed, and in the workplace. And it could be just a conversation that lasts with people. It could be, giving somebody an opportunity, where they don't even remember your name. They don't remember the opportunity that you gave them. But in this instance, what you're talking about, that invisible medal, based off of the story that you're telling, giving those individuals the ability and the space without really knowing that you were doing so, giving
Mhm.
them the space to grow and to advance their careers, and you providing that legacy. That's the legacy that you leave behind. And again, might not be grand, but it is there. That's yours. It's your legacy. So,
That's it.
um,
One person
yeah,
at a time.
one person at a time. That's
Yeah.
all it is. One person at a time. One conversation at a time. One generous act at a time. I mean, these are things that we forget about. Like when we think about legacy, and like I said, legacy just doesn't have to be as
Mm-mm.
grand as we want it to be.
You know,
Um,
Ken, when I give my keynotes, the very last slide is kind of a call to action, and it's showing that the impact that we can have on so many different people, and the calling basically is like just one person a month. Just do something significant for one person a month, and it doesn't have to be somebody you have a relationship with, where you're helping them achieve their potential or something. It could be somebody at a grocery store that's having a
yeah,
bad, and just approaching them and saying, "Hey, is everything okay? You're gonna be all right." But if we do this and it's in an impactful way, so much so that they will be inspired to want to do the same thing, and that will be carried over to another person and another and another. You're not just impacting 12 people in a year; you're impacting 8,191 people in one year,
yes,
and
yes.
and that's what impact is all about. And that's if we could just all be that way, I mean, we'd definitely be in a better place, I think.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I'm like you too. Like I had just gone to a conference last week, and it was at the Gila River Casino and Resort. So it was a casino place, and I was out front. It gets a little loud in the casinos for me sometimes. So I just sometimes I just go and stand out front or whatever. And there was this woman that was standing there, and I could see that she was just quiet and maybe
Hmm.
seemed like she wanted to have a conversation. So we got into a conversation, and it turns out that she was a little older. She recently lost her husband like
Oh,
6 months ago, and she was there by herself. She was just
oh
hanging
man.
out, having a good time, for herself and doing the things that she does to keep herself busy. And I was able to have a conversation with her, and we talked for maybe 20 minutes, half an hour, and that was it. And
That's
and and
great.
I know, like, it was for me, it was such a great opportunity just to talk to somebody, and find out that, she's been living in Arizona for
Mm.
35 years. She was born in England but raised in South Africa. Like this woman had
Story.
this really amazing life, and all the stuff that you find out in 25, 30 minutes of just sitting down and
Mhm.
having a conversation with somebody. And again, I didn't do it to be nice. I did it just because I like to talk to people. I
Yeah,
mean,
I'm sure it was
sometimes.
impactful for her, that's great.
Yeah, yeah. So I normally give out, like, and it's funny. I don't have them on me, but I normally give out these little cards, and this is for my other side business. And all it does is it's just thanking people for taking up space with me. So
Oh,
it's
that's
you know
cool.
it's just and it could be just a kind act. It could just be like a smile. It could be something like that. It's just these little tiny cards that there's a QR code on it. There's a little haiku poem on there. There's a little saying that says, "Thank you for sharing space with me today." And then the QR code just gives
That's
them a like a thank you, and asks them to take the card and give it to somebody else that
cool.
that basically does the same, like that shows that kindness, that shows that engagement, that human approach in there. So yeah,
I love
it's
that.
it's it's it's
That's
been it's been wonderful. It's been and I don't even have, like, I have no links on there, so like it takes you to my one website, but there's no selling anything on there. It's just like, this is it. Just
yeah,
pass it along. That's all I want you to do.
that's
Just
perfect.
send the message. Just send the message. So
I love it.
yeah, yeah. So let's talk a little bit about your book.
Okay.
So the Invisible Medal. So leading with a higher purpose. So it came out in April 2024 to rave reviews. By the way, I've been looking online and just looking at all the reviews and everything. So,
Yeah, thank you.
um, I know we were talked a little bit more about, you talked a little bit about what inspired the title, but really, what's the message you really hope readers, when they
Mhm.
read this, will walk away with?
It's all about significance over success. We're just so driven to succeed, and like I said earlier, the certificates and plaques on our walls and everything like that, the stuff that are seen, but it's those invisible medals, like the conversation that you just shared that you had with that lady. Maybe she really needed somebody to talk to her right then. You don't know, but I would say she probably did. And that in and of itself right there is an invisible medal. You're not going to go home and put a plaque on your wall. Hey, I had a conversation with somebody who was hurting and really needed to talk to somebody. But that's impactful. And so one of the quotes in my book is that no one will remember the medals that we wore in life, but they will remember the impact that we had on their life. And so, in other words, it's just truly focusing on the higher level of leadership, which is not about success, but it's all about significance and how are we helping others achieve some level of their full potential, or just impacting them in a way that just helps them, you know? I mean, I
Yeah,
guess whittling it down, that's what it's all about. It goes into a lot more details than that, because I talk about kind of a life's journey and character and culture and values and crucibles and things of that nature. But really, the invisible medal is all about recognizing that being significant for somebody is far more valuable than the medals that we wear that are visible.
yeah. And to your point too, maybe I needed to talk to her. Maybe I needed it at that
Goes
moment.
both ways. That's a true point.
It's a both way type of thing. I mean, maybe subconsciously I needed it, but
Well,
um, but
I would say this too for the listeners. It's about earning invisible medals, yes, but um, it's also about giving invisible medals, and that is something that is so incredibly powerful. And every human being can do this. And I started doing this in some of my keynotes when I realized how powerful this was of just taking a pause and say, think about somebody who is significant in your life in some way, who's done something for you that really helped you get over a challenge or a hardship. And then I just, for 3 minutes, it's complete silence. I'm like, pull out your phones and send them an email or send them a text right now and tell them that they did something, that they were significant for you. And Ken, I got to tell you, the responses that I've been getting back just from that alone have really made my eyes water because it is incredibly impactful. What they send and then what they receive back. And I could go on and on about some of those. So it's a power that we all have as humans. So giving those invisible medals, telling people thank you for being significant in my life, and then focusing on being significant for others.
yeah, that's such an amazing message, Chris. I
Oh,
appreciate
I
it.
appreciate. Thank you.
And I'm certain that the listeners will appreciate it too. But I mean, it is exactly what you're saying. It is so important to say the things that we need to say. Especially when it comes to impact, especially when it comes to how people impact our lives, good or bad, but really on a good level.
Hmm.
Give the people the recognition when they do something for you. When they change your trajectory in some way. So important in there. So I love that message. I love that you added it into your keynotes, and I
Yeah,
love that
great.
people still reach back out to you after they get some of those messages back.
I
It's
love
so
when they do
that
that.
is so amazing. That's so amazing. So yeah, awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, appreciate it.
So you've actually lived leadership development. Okay. Not just taught it, you've actually lived it. So in your view, what is missing from a lot of leadership programs out there today?
Oh man, I will tell you, a lot of people that I don't want to upset any of the listeners out there, especially anybody who's a contractor that does leadership development. But I think where most organizations really miss the boat, quite frankly, is they outsource it. They know that it's important. And so they, instead of building something from within the talent that they have in their own organization, they outsource it, which, in my opinion, is a simple check in the box. That's okay. See, leadership development is important for us. We hired this company to do it for us. Now, I'm not saying that it's totally bad. All right, there's some really good companies out there that provide fantastic leadership development. But I think if you want something that's going to grow, that's going to stick, that's going to resonate, why not look at the talent you have within your own organization because they are part of the very culture that you are trying to build a leadership development program around. And so it's best to be built for us, by us, within the culture and the talent that we have. And that was our approach at Auburn University, that rather than outsourcing and paying millions of dollars for somebody to come in, we said, let's just find the talent that we have. And we got the support from the top. Everything was aligned with our strategic plan and our core values for Auburn University. And we had plenty of people volunteer to want to be a part of this as well and give of their time and resources. And then we just started to build it internally. And it's already stuck. And so it's been fantastic. But I think that's why is that people, they don't want to, they may not devote the time, energy, and resources that are necessary to make something like this really work because it is time consuming to be sure. But I think that's where most missed the boat. Probably, I could be wrong. It's just,
So Chris, at Auburn,
mhm.
you and your team have built out a full performance development program for employees.
Oh
Okay.
yeah.
What does that actually look like on the ground? I'd love to hear this. By the way, I'm like totally tuned in on this answer. So what does it actually look like on the ground, and what kind of impact have you seen across the university?
Oh yeah, it's a good question because we have seen a lot of that. We just rolled it out not too terribly long ago. We closed out our performance year on May 31st, so not that long ago. But this kind of goes back, honestly, Ken, to 2023 when we had to identify what's wrong, what needs to be fixed, right? So we did a survey. We had over 50% response rate, which was pretty significant for surveys because nobody likes to do surveys, right? And that's where we learned a lot of things that they wanted something that was more standard, something that was tied also to values. And we had supervisors that basically said, I'm not, I'm new at this leadership thing. I don't know what I'm doing. Can you help? Right. And so by virtue of fixing performance management, we realized there's a lot more stuff going on here. We don't have a leadership development program. We don't have a performance management program that's tied to really collaboration and communication with our between direct report and employee, and we don't have values as part of the overall program. So we kind of took on a few projects simultaneously, and we don't call it performance management. We call it performance development because you manage things and processes and you lead and develop people. All right. And what we decided is that we needed to identify the standard, which is what Auburn's core values are, which is commitment to excellence, service, and respect. And how do we inculcate that into a system that we can train to that? And so we train to that through our Aspire Auburn Leadership Development Program. So basically, we're identifying the standard, we're training to the standard, and then there's the holding people accountable to the standard at the very end, which is when the performance eval comes out. So it's really all aligned, I guess. At the end of the day, when we're aligning everything from the strategic plan, Auburn's core values, our leadership development program, and performance development program. And where we've seen this work, to the second part of your question, somebody shared with me not too long ago the evaluation that they provided to them with a long email, really encouraging the employee. It was really motivational to read. I was like, this is fantastic. And the lady who was showing this to me said, Chris, I've been here for 3 years. She's never given me a review before. Now, not only am I getting a review, but I'm getting all this other data. And she had also attended our leadership development program too, which is great. So if there's more stories out there like that I'm not aware of, then it's telling me that something's working. You know?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah.
you should encourage. I'm going to encourage anybody that's working at Auburn University. If you have a story like that, please reach out to Chris.
Yeah,
Um,
it's good to hear 'em.
please let him know that it's working.
Yep.
Um, but no, and it's and you know the key point in there really, and one thing I want the listeners to really hear in there is, when you're looking at this, the all of this, it aligns not only with the strategic, the strategic plan, with the mission, vision, values, but it's also ingrained in the performance evaluations. Like it's like these are the standards that we are anticipating. These are the standards that we expect of you, the behaviors we expect of you as an employee. We're talking organizational citizenship behavior at this point. Like this is what is expected of you. That's what the employee handbook is there for.
Right.
And that's why it's super important to have a really good employee handbook and have an understanding of
True.
processes and systems and all that kind of stuff because they are what guide the behaviors of the employees. But the fact that you're able to, and really important in there is put it into the performance evaluations. So important so that it's not just, okay, these are the statements, these are our values.
Hmm.
Great. You can take values and put them up on the wall.
You got
Great.
that right.
But unless there's accountability to them, then there's you can't anticipate, you can't expect people to live those values. But if you're measuring
Yeah.
at performance standards based on the values, then that's what it is. Like you're encouraging or requiring that behavior. So the values are required in that behavior. So let me just follow up in there too, Chris. So
Okay.
you talked about this being having a leadership, the leadership development program. In the leadership development program, do you train on those values on how not just them as individuals, as employees, individual contributors, but them as leaders. How do they measure that on a day-to-day basis, not only for themselves but for the employees that their direct reports as well.
Absolutely. And Ken, it's actually just a fantastic question because as leaders, we tend to say that we're too busy, right, to develop ourselves. We'll definitely take the time to develop our teammates, but we put ourselves on, I guess, I'm too busy. I got too many things going on. I can't step away. So that conference that you and I met at in Atlanta, I had been at Auburn for 2 years before I went on any type of a professional development training. And I thought, you know what? I've got to practice what I preach. I need to go and do something here. And as a result of that conference, I learned about peer circles. Had never really seen that concept before it play out. And we also had a one of the breakout sessions was with Delta, and they talked about integrity being one of their main values. And I asked the question, how did you define it? And they said, we didn't define it. We let the frontline supervisors define it because they're the ones that are going to have to live it. So it's funny how we pick up on these things in life and we remember them. So to answer your specific question, we do talk about our values during the Leading Self program. It's a video recording, and I think it's commitment to excellence, it's integrity, and it's respect. Service is something we talk about, but the actual core values is excellence, integrity, and respect. And what we try to do with the Leading People program is we talk about those values, but they have leadership principles that they need to uphold as well. And those leadership principles are to empower, enable, encourage, and develop themselves and their teammates. And we break into the peer circles. Again, I learned this at that conference where I met you. We break into peer circles and we say, okay, define the core values, which is the most important and why. It's a trick question. They're all important, right? And then define the leadership principles, which is the most important and why. And what we're basically showing them is how to model a conversation with their team. So then these values become more than just words, they're concepts. And they talk about how you can apply them and how we can live them and why they matter. And it's almost like a contract as well. We're all going to uphold these values. But as your supervisor, I need to uphold these values, these principles as well. And that's how we put it into the training program.
I love that, Chris. Yeah, and it's so important. I mean, and for those of you that are listening out there, one of the things that I want you to know, some of these conferences, are absolutely wonderful. And if you go to some of the sessions and know what you want to get out of the conference itself, like when I went to ATD Org Dev, it was about going to the sessions. When I went to SIOP in the 2025, the Society for Industrial Organizational Psychology, for me, it was about networking for that one. So I only went to 3 sessions when I went to SIOP over 4 days. But let me tell you, I networked with so many people there, and I learned so many. So know when you're going to the conferences that understand what you're looking to accomplish, and know that you can get so much value and so much knowledge by attending the sessions or by networking and by meeting people. I look at this, for example, Chris and I would have never met Chris if it wasn't for the fact that I was in a little bit of a networking mindset. I think I was having dinner. I needed to decompress a little bit or whatever it was. And Chris was there and we started talking a little bit, and then it became like this really great conversation. So you just don't ever know where that knowledge is going to come from. And so it's important though, that you seek out that knowledge and that you continue to grow as OD professionals, as just professionals in general, in your personal lives, etc. It's so important. I look at that again as being as part of my purpose, for myself, is getting those learning opportunities. And I'm not a young person anymore, but I still go to school. So, I mean,
That's
I'm,
perfect.
I'm going to
That's great.
continue going to school. I'm
Yeah.
going to continue going to school until I can't go to school anymore. So, It's the way it is. By the way, I love being in a formal structured like university and stuff like that. For me,
Yeah,
it's just wonderful.
that's great.
Um, but I mean, yeah. So really, really important in there, Chris. That exactly what you said. Practice what you preach. If you want your team to be have a growth mindset, you need to have a growth mindset. If you want your team to value the values, to live the values. You need to live those values. You need to value those values. And another thing, Chris, that you talked about, so important in there, what we did is the trainings that we give outside of, let's say, our leadership training and outside of, let's say, for example, a department needs a team building activity or a team building, we actually would weave the core values into the trainings. So
Really?
not even not even this is, it's just like communication with one. So this is communication. We're going to talk about communication here. It was, we would find a way just to kind of weave it in so that when we were as trainers moving into the different departments, we would also make sure that the core values were inside or ingrained within the trainings that
Perfect.
we had, so that we're also training on them, but we're also living them as well, so I think that's really important too. So Chris, we talk a little bit about there's often this gap between metrics and meaning, between tracking performance and actually developing people. So how do you bridge that space so that performance development feels human, not just transactional?
Oh, okay. This is good because we've named our new performance development program ACE Performance, which is kind of cool. We're going to help you ACE Performance, right? But it stands for Align, Collaborate, and Evaluate. And so the first month of our performance year is spent on aligning. Like, I don't know about you, but there's so many times at the end of a performance year, I'm being rated on stuff I didn't even know I was responsible for. I'm like, I didn't know that was my job, right? So aligning at the very beginning, say this is what we expect. These are your expectations. These are your essential functions, your primary responsibilities, and that alignment phase after the first month. Then we get into the most important part of it all, and it's collaboration. And the whole push of this performance development is not on the evaluation at the end of the year, but it's about the communication that takes place. At one point, we wanted to call it partnering for performance because it's a partnership. It's a team effort. It's not a having a one-on-one so I can tell you how you're doing poorly in your job. No, it's having a one-on-one so we're collaborating and we're learning from each other and we're identifying goals, personal and professional goals, growth opportunities, areas where there's maybe a bit more of a passion that can be connected to the same purpose of what it is that we're doing in our roles. So the collaboration part is what is by far the most important. So it's taking out the metrics and you mentioned a lot the human touch and the human connection. And we're really trying to kind of break the paradigm here of listen, this isn't something at the end of the year. This is something that is continuous and it's relationship building and it's meaningful and significant. So we call it collaboration.
Yeah, and I love that too. It's when we look at performance evaluations. I like the performance appraisal terminology
Hmm.
over the evaluation.
True.
But I mean, it's exactly your approach there, looking at it as a collaborative effort. And I know, again, at the previous organization that I worked at, we made it a point that what we had done was we had moved the performance evaluations themselves were originally 100% weighted by the manager. And what we did is
Mhm.
we've actually moved it to 90% to the manager, 10% to the employee for the first year. The
Nice.
second year, we moved it from 75% to 25 and 75%, 25% with the goal. I don't know what they did this year with the goal of moving it to a 60-40, 50-50 model, making sure that we trained everybody to do exactly what they needed to do. Um, but we had the primary competencies in there were basically, how do you do in your role, how do you do in your job. The core values were in there as the competency. but we had a goal section. So each employee had 3 to 5 goals that were developed by them and their manager. Hopefully, that's what we did.
That's right. Collaborate.
We were a team of two supporting 1,100 employees. I don't know what happened behind closed doors. So,
Yeah.
but the goal is ideally it
Uh-huh.
was supposed to be the manager and the employee develop 3 to 5 specific goals that align with the position, that align with the department, that align with the organization. The goals, because in a tribal government, the goals are not all going to be the same.
Mhm.
There's you have a health department, and then 8 or 9 sub departments within that division. You have law enforcement, so you have a police department, you have a fire department, you have a legal services department, like
Wow.
AG. So there was a lot of different areas that just don't, you can't just take blanket goals and say, okay, yes, this is for the entire organization.
Sure. That
It
makes
doesn't
sense.
work like that.
That's
So the
right.
goals were set up so that the employees would have something to work for and work towards, and have a little bit more of an understanding of what was expected of them within the performance evaluations, specifically on the skills and job expertise. They actually had a copy of their job description. So the job description was there, so they couldn't say, like, I didn't know.
Perfect. That's
You
right.
forget
There you
sometimes.
go.
So
Yep.
I didn't know, but but they would have that job description in there. So it was exactly what you're saying, encouraging that one-on-one, that conversation with, you know, I look at specifically when I look at the one-on-ones when I used to do them, wasn't about me. And all of the stuff, like all the, if you needed to provide me with an update, I'm not going to ask, what are you working on? What is this? What is that? What is that? Yeah, that can be sent to me in an email. That's it. Really simple. You can send me a bullet point email once a month, and we're good to go on that.
Hmm.
What I want to know is, where can I support you? Where are some of your challenges? Where are some of the areas where maybe you found a different process, a different procedure? Looking at things like that. So, when you're talking about the one-on-ones, really, really important there. Really important there to make sure that we're having effective one-on-ones as well. So, Chris, we talk about, you mentioned that you're a keynote speaker, that you're a mentor, a multi-time author, um, but we also hear that you are a constant learner. Okay,
Hmm.
I'm not going to get a sense of it. I already know you're a constant learner. Um, and I know that you talked about that those peer learning groups. What is something that you've learned more recently than that, whether from your work, your team, or just sitting with your own thoughts, that has surprised you?
Hmm. Well, uh, and again, I love the way you did the intro, calling it a journey, because it is so true. It is a journey. We're always learning. We're learning from everybody that we can, if we choose to. We can learn from anybody that we come into contact with. And I'll tell you, there's two that come to mind. One of those is when we have the peer circles kind of share their ideas and talks. One of the directors said that when he sits down and he does his one-on-ones, he always starts off by asking his teammate, share some good news with me. What is some good news you can share of what happened since the last time we met? I just thought that was incredible. And I told him, I said, I'm stealing that, dude. That's so brilliant. And I did. And now I don't even have to, whenever we have our one-on-ones, my teammates, they just start talking about the good news since the last time that we met. I don't even have to ask, so that was something I learned fairly recently. But the one that I was really thinking about, that got me really stoked when you were posing that question, is during one of my this is last term. So I teach also at the College of Business, teach leadership and professional development. And at the end of class, at the end of our term, actually, one of my students recommended this book to me. But it's this one here. I had never heard of it before, and she said, "I think you would enjoy it." Well, I'm busy. I've got a whole bookshelf here of other things, but I thought, you know what, that's really cool. A student would recommend that, so I bought the book by Michael Ivanov, "The Cabin at the End of the Train." And in the book, I learned that there is a leadership author who I'd never heard of, and I'm ashamed to admit it, but his name is Og Mandino, who was very popular in the 70s and 80s. And his story is profound. And so I did a little bit more research into him, got one of his books, and learned that he was a World War II veteran. Actually, flew the B-52 bombers with Jimmy Stewart, the famous actor. Had an incredible story, but when he came back after the war, didn't do so well readjusting. We tried to sell insurance anyway, and he had lost everything, lost his home, his wife, his daughter, and had nothing, and was contemplating taking his own life because he was on the streets at this point. He sought refuge in a library, and at the library, the section that he was, where he was getting out of the cold and the rain, was a personal growth self-help section. And so he just started reading books, and that motivated him to rise up from his current predicament. And would you believe that he sold over 200 million copies of leadership and self-help books, and was one of the best keynote speakers of his time? I never heard of him, and I was so moved by that story. And it's all because I decided to take up one of my students who recommended me to read this book that led me to learn about that story. So thank you for the recommendation. I loved it. And yes, that really that surprised me that I hadn't heard of him before, and the story, which is just so powerful.
Yeah, and I love that it came from an unexpected source.
Yep.
You are here. You are the instructor, the professor, the teacher, and it's coming from your students. And
Yep.
it's and again, a lot of people, think that the professor-student relationship is one way, and in some cases it can be. In some instances it is, but that's not always the case. There is that back and forth, and you really can learn. And I know, like, when I taught, I used to adjunct at a community college living in New York, and it was English Comp. I used to do English Comp 1.
Nice.
So I knew that my course was one of the gateway courses for all, like science, papers, and if people decided to do English, like it was a lot of the critical thinking. So that was my focus. I always said that, you know, with students, especially in English composition, I focus more on the critical thinking aspect,
Oh,
um, as opposed to the grammatical. Yes, you need to know grammar and stuff like that, but all of that stuff can be learned. Critical thinking, though, is a skill that needs to be developed,
mhm.
or even have individuals, especially students, be able to see it, from a critical lens, to be able to actually start to really think deliberately, and I know, like,
Right.
like you're saying, some of the things that I took from that is I would see those aha moments, and I loved seeing those aha moments where it was like I would have a student, I just go, and I would just watch their face go, oh, and I was like,
Perfect.
and I
Yeah,
would always have maybe one student a semester. That's all I needed,
that's
one
all it
student a
takes,
semester.
man. That's wonderful. That's wonderful.
Yeah, yeah. So I love that. I love that dual approach in there, and the give and take, and the mutual, that mutual
Yeah,
respect in there. Because
absolutely.
the other
That
part to that too is you being open to, a student, or and not that you wouldn't be, but
mhm.
I know that some people are, they have a very strict understanding of hierarchy, and
Sure. Yeah.
and aren't necessarily open to, somebody that might be
Mm.
considered on the lower rung on the hierarchy.
Then they're missing
Um,
opportunities.
right, exactly, because there's opportunities all over the place, and it's
Yes.
just being open to them. So that also is a testament to you and your approach with that growth mindset. So really important to
Thank
recognize
you.
that for you.
Appreciate it.
So yeah, yeah. So you have led everything from small teams to massive global organizations. So what changes when you lead at scale, and what stays exactly the same?
Oh, yeah. Well, the common theme should always be your core values. Your personal core values. I don't think that changes no matter if you're leading one person or or 10,000 people. It's who you are. And I think everybody wants to know what you value. And so it's okay to be transparent and talk about that. So that should be, for me anyway, that's been a common thread, and I've tried to not compromise on that. Well, I haven't compromised on it because of your core values. You can't. If you do, you have to fix it because you won't be able to live with yourself, you know? So, so knowing who you are, your core values, your priorities, ought to be fairly consistent. In terms of the leadership, though, that can be a challenge for a lot of folks, especially as I look back in the military. When I had the privilege to command a squadron, that was 750 Marines. I knew everybody. I had a chance over a period of time. You recognize them, you see the faces, you know the names, but when you get up to the higher levels, when you're talking into the thousands of people, you won't be able to do that. And I remember asking a two-star general how he was able to be successful at both levels. And he told me that we need to get into the mindset of commanding commanders. I would phrase that of leading leaders. So at a higher level, you still have influence over everybody that falls under your organization. Let's just say you're the president of a university and you've got, thousands and thousands of students and employees. You still set the climate and identify what the values are for that organization. But you focus your time and energy now on those senior vice presidents that are going to be implementing that strategic plan and enforcing that. And hopefully at their level, if they have large organizations as well, then they kind of break that down too. So you're leading leaders at the higher echelons. And then at the lower echelons of leadership, you're making those connections and building the meaningful relationships. So I hope that helps
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
that.
And I think, hearing that in there too, like the common thread is developing those relationships.
Yes. Yep.
So whether it's at large scale or it's at a smaller scale, where you can know everybody within the organization, but it's developing those relationships. It's developing that trust. It's being consistent. It's being, you know, just just building those relationships in there.
Yep.
And that's what this is one of the reasons why I love this. I love doing this podcast, because the whole idea behind this podcast too, yeah, it's all about organizational development, but it really is the human centered approach. And you're just hitting on every bullet point that I need for
It's
this
perfect. I
podcast.
love
So
it.
I appreciate it, Chris. Like you're making my job super easy. So I'm just
Nice.
gonna sit there and be like, all right, Chris is gonna host the next couple episodes
Oh
or
man.
so. Yeah, it would be great. It would be great.
I love it. I don't know
Um,
if I could do it. This will be hard work. I don't. You're doing great
I
though.
know
I'm impressed,
it's
man.
super fun. It's super fun. The good thing about it is, I get to talk to, again, I get to talk to people like you. I get to talk to, people that may not be guests on the show that talk to me about the podcast itself. And I'm an introvert. So for me, this takes a lot of energy out of me. I'm not,
Dang.
I'm not huge on the Myers-Briggs, but the MBTI, my last assessment had me at 93% introverted, 7%
Wow.
extroverted. So
No
this
kidding.
takes a lot of energy from me, but this
I,
is okay because this is more like I like this because it's more of a controlled environment. It's more of an intimate conversation, so it's fine with me.
yeah. That's
Um, but it's given me the ability to meet new people and to hear some really really brilliant individuals just come and share their experience and share some of their insights, and some of those insights, I have a little short videos that I do called OD Unfiltered,
mm,
where I do maybe 1 minute videos, and some of those ideas that come in, I get to expand upon them,
oh,
and
that's
listen
fun.
to them expand upon them. It's
That's great.
it's been a lot of fun. I mean, this journey has been a lot more than I anticipated it to be. And I
Oh,
just
wonderful.
I just started it because I got so many questions like, what is organizational development? Like, what do
Mm,
you do? I'm like, all right,
yep.
how about
Yep.
I do a podcast and I'll just start talking about it? And then of course now, I'm in IO psychology, and I get the question like, what is IO psychology? And I'm like, all right, I
There,
can't do another podcast in there. I'll just have all the other IOs.
eventually.
I'll have all the other IOs talk about that stuff. So
Yeah. That was
So
awesome.
so yeah, so Chris, so for someone who wants to lead with more purpose but isn't quite sure how to begin,
Hmm.
what would you say to them, and where should they start?
Um, I would probably start with reflection. Frankly, when we would have general officers speak at the Air War College where I worked for a while, we would retired general officers. We would always ask them the same question: "What do you wish you spent more time doing?" And every single one of them had the same answer, and that answer was, "I wish I spent more time reflecting." I think we just get too caught up in the day's tasks and chores and responsibilities, and even taking that to another level, the philosopher John Dewey said that we don't learn from experience; we learn from reflecting on that experience. And so, a lot of the stories that I shared in my keynotes, I've had to really do some deep reflection to take me back in my own journey backwards and how I grew up and how I was raised, how certain values came to be my values, and it's just it can be a fantastic journey if you let it be to reflect on who you are and why you are in your current role and what have you been able to connect your passions to a purpose. So reflection's a really big one. For me, I do a lot of reading and I do a lot of writing. Some people, maybe you call it journaling or whatnot, but if once a month I just try to capture the things that have happened. What did I learn through these experiences? And just kind of write that down. So and then prepare yourself for the next level, whatever it takes. And you know where you want to go. What's it take to get there? If you want to be a psychologist, maybe you want to work on some degrees to get there. So have a plan and then figure out how you're going to get there. So I'd say read, reflect, write, and prepare, but don't underestimate the value of reflection and try to incorporate that. Maybe reflection meditation every day.
Yeah, love that answer, Chris. I mean, it's reflection is so important, and especially, when we were talking about right in the very beginning, like, we were talking about, individuals really should know themselves.
Mm,
And, before they start to not develop relationships. I mean, you can develop a relationship without knowing yourself, but I mean, when you're reflecting and you're really getting to the core of who you are as a leader, the core of who you are as a person, it makes those relationships more authentic, and it makes them. And I'm not big on using the word authentic, but it makes them more authentic. It can
mhm.
make you, the connections a little bit deeper because you know who you are and you know from your who you are as a leader. So I love that. You talking about reflection in there as one of the places for somebody to start.
Well,
So
thank you. Yeah, that's
yeah,
great.
it's awesome. So Chris, we are going to close out. So
Okay.
if you had to put your leadership philosophy into one phrase or sentence, something someone could carry with them after hearing this, what
Mm.
would that be?
Well, you know what? I think the simple phrase to love one another is very true. That's what servant leadership is all about. But if you're really, it's what we're here on this earth for, right? Loving one another, and that can just go through so many different levels and ripples of taking care of people, helping them achieve their full potential, building those meaningful relationships, recognizing that our life on this earth, it's a stewardship, it's short. Um, and if we try to focus on the ways that we're similar as opposed to the ways that we're different, then we'd be in a much better place. So respecting each other, knowing that we have differences, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. We're all learning and growing from it with each other because life is just one big journey anyway. So I just try to live that honestly. Just love one another, man.
That's awesome, Chris. Thank you for that. I appreciate it, and it's such a great final message in there. So, Chris, thank you so much for joining me on Unboxing OD. This has been wonderful for me.
Been
For
fantastic.
those individuals that are looking for your book, where would you recommend that they go? Like what website specifically do you recommend they go to?
Well, Of course, it's on Amazon like every book is, but it's also Books A Million and Target. It's all online. Everything's print on demand these days, pretty much anymore. Unless you live in Auburn, then there's some local bookstores. But theinvisiblemetal.com is my website. Or if you just type in The Invisible Metal, then they can find it at whatever source that they prefer to purchase it from. You can also
Perfect.
get a smaller version of it at Lulu Bookstore, which is a new publishing company I've learned about. So I have a smaller version of it that's just chapter one of that I do with my keynotes. So thank you for asking that. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I'll make sure that in the show notes, so those of you who are listening in, I'll make sure that in the show notes that we have a link to theinvisiblemetal.com. Is that the
Yes, sir.
website? We have a link to invisiblemetal.com. So therefore you can go directly to that site and then purchase where you are looking to purchase or where you're comfortable purchasing. And Chris, is it okay for us to put your LinkedIn information?
Oh,
Can
you're
people connect with you on
absolutely.
LinkedIn? Perfect.
Absolutely.
So I will also have that in the show notes as well. So those of you who are listening, please certainly reach out to Chris. This is my second conversation with him. For actually our third conversation because I think
That's
we
right.
talked. I think we talked twice, right? We talked twice
That's
or a
right.
couple times when we were there. But
Yep.
but Chris is is a wonderful person. Yeah, very very insightful. He knows his stuff, so absolutely reach out to him on LinkedIn. Definitely pick up the copy of Invisible Metal. And yeah, Chris, thank you again. I
Thank
hope you have a
you.
great rest of your day.
Thank you so much, Ken. Thanks for everything that you're doing, man. I appreciate you. Thanks for being significant.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it.
Yeah, appreciate you.
That brings us to the close of this episode of Unboxing OD. My thanks to Colonel Chris Ritchie for a conversation that grounded leadership in something both timeless and deeply human. What stays with me is how simple it can be to shift from chasing recognition to choosing significance. It isn't the plaques or titles that endure. It's the invisible medals earned when we take the time to connect, to encourage, and to help someone see their own purpose more clearly. If you'd like to keep this conversation going, you'll find links in the show notes to connect with Chris, as well as a direct path to his book, The Invisible Medal. My own contact information is there as well, and I'd be glad to hear what resonated with you. Until next time, keep reflecting, keep leading with significance, and keep unboxing what work really means. Take care.